Hi everybody, welcome to Millennial Think Tank. And tonight we were talking about vacations and budgets and what millennials want out of vacation. As usual, I'm going to frame the discussion with a few facts. The Atlantic did a whole extensive article that was actually pretty interesting, and this is one of the tidbits that kind of blew my mind. The United Nations estimates that 20% of all international tourists, or nearly 200 million travelers, are young people, millennials. And that the millennial demographic generates more than $180 billion in annual tourism revenue internationally, which is an increase of 30% since 2007. And the American Hotel and Lodging Association gives this stat that the lodging industry generated $41 billion, which is an increase of 10% over 2012. So that's for hotel stays, because one of the things I want to talk about is there's this generalization that millennials like to stay in private accommodations like Airbnb, but the budget lodging industry is still booming. So we'll dig in and ask a lot of questions around that. But first, I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. So Jeremy, we'll start with you. Who you are, where you fall in the millennial spectrum, and where you are geographically and what you do for a living. So start.
Okay, how's everybody doing? My name is Jeremy Vargas. I work marketing communications at Amadeus North America. We're based here in Miami, so I've got the sun and the heat, while the rest of the country doesn't. And I don't know, for fun, I like going to the beach. So I don't know what you guys like doing, but yeah, that's me.
Okay, Joe.
My name's Joe Cardillo. I'm an older millennial. I'm 30, and I do a lot of startup work. I work with our company on content and growth and analytics, an entrepreneur. Do a lot of that sort of stuff, tech type stuff, and I'll talk probably a little more about vacations, but I haven't taken vacation in a good while. So.
And you live in New Mexico now?
Oh yeah, I live in New Mexico. Yep.
Okay, Judy.
I'm Judy McCluskey. I work at Chicago Shakespeare. I live in Chicago. It is not warm here. I would like to spend my time at the beach, but that's not an option. I'm also an older millennial, and I am taking my first actual vacation without work or duties or anything else this year for the first time since I was like 16.
Okay, Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm middle millennial, 28. I'm a minimum wage slave, and I've been planning a road trip vacation for about a year now, and the goal is to use social media and crowdfunding to create something entertaining in order to pay for that vacation so that I don't have to because I'm broke.
Okay, well, we'll definitely ask more about that. Tiffany?
I'm Tiffany Daniels. I'm also an older millennial. I live in Austin, Texas. And I don't really know. I guess I'm probably, not shockingly, more traditional vacations than a lot. I also travel a lot to see my family because my family's in different parts of the country. So that is a part of my vacation, while it may not be the exciting planning portion.
Okay, and I'm Amy Tobin. I'm not a millennial. I am the VP of Content and Strategy for our company, and I moderate the Millennial Think Tank. Okay, so Judy, let's talk about yours. So what is this big vacation you're planning, and is it outside of the U.S.?
Yes, it is the first trip since I was 14 that I'm actually taking outside of the U.S. because I've been broke for 20 years. I am going to Rome and Venice. I don't speak a single word of Italian, and I didn't plan for it. I have not been saving up for it, so it's a little bit of a scramble, and I'm like, oh, great, it's tax season, so that's what's going to pay for this trip.
And how long is it going to be, this trip?
About 10 days.
Okay, and when are you leaving? Can I come?
No, and it's in May.
Okay, all right. So this is the first time. So I took Judy, she's my younger sister, to London and Scotland when she was 14. So you have not traveled outside of the U.S. since then?
No, I finished high school, and then I got student loan debt, and that's what I've been doing since then.
So who else on the panel has traveled internationally? Jeremy, okay, so where'd you go? How many times have you gone, and all that good?
I've actually grown up like over Europe, but I think my last really big trip was to South Africa, and we stood actually in like kind of like a hostel over there, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, tickets were bought like in advance, so and we kind of like raised our money to go. So you
So
know,
did you go with friends? You went
what
with
was
friends? You went with friends or with family?
No, I went with friends. I went with friends. So Kelly, if you're trying to raise your money, it's definitely possible. Don't
Well,
let
how'd you do it? Tell us how you did it.
We actually got sponsors to go because it was a service trip. So we wanted to take a trip to South Africa, but we also wanted to make it kind of like meaningful and impactful. So we were going over there to help out with the HIV/AIDS education that was going on over there. So we thought we'd knock out two in one, and we made it a worthwhile trip where we got to help out at the same time. And while we were doing that, before we left, we were just raising awareness, and we ended up fundraising. We got sponsors to kind of just pay for us.
Were you in college?
Yeah, that's right.
Was this through any kind of a group that you were going? I mean, how did you get connected with the people in South Africa that you were going to help?
Yeah, no, it was through we had an organization on campus called Alternative Spring Break. So they have chapters in universities all over the United States. So I mean, it was a really great organization. They had connection with a nonprofit in South Africa, and through that, they told us, hey, do you want to take on this project? And we're like, sure, it's an opportunity to travel to South Africa. We're here trying to make a difference. So we had this whole opportunity to like be active citizens, do some nonprofit work, but also travel at the same time. So
did they hook you up with a way to raise money, or did you just have to go and do it your own? Like, did they point you in a direction to fundraise?
No, we really had to do it on our own. So we used things like GoFundMe, we crowdfunded, we reached out to sponsors, and we fundraised around campus. We're in Greek organizations at the university, so fundraising isn't as difficult as it is, for other people. But it was. Yeah. Well, we raised like 20,000, I think.
That's actually what I was wondering. So how long did you go for?
We were there for about a month.
Wow. And
yeah.
So did you get a chunk of free time when you were there, or was it all service work?
Oh no, we had our free time when we were there. So it was really interesting. We had like our driver, he drove us around. So we definitely had more money to spend than we probably needed while we were over there. But usually with the millennials who travel abroad, they usually go on a budget, and they could make $8,000 last for like 6 months. It's definitely not uncommon to find that. And with the statistics that you were talking about in the beginning, with the 20% responsible for travel for the international travel for millennials, I remember actually looking at that data, and what I found too is that with the market being bad, as it was going bad, they found an increase in millennial travel going up. And the study kind of like really showed how millennials were traveling, even though the economy didn't really fit the mood for that time to travel, because they were no longer saving for a future that was no longer guaranteed. So they were just like, hey, let's travel right now, Yeah, so I think that's why millennials are traveling all the time.
I also read that it's because they weren't working. So it's like, okay, heck, we'll just go. So Joe, you were going to answer that question too when I said, and Jeremy, I want to come back to other trips you've taken, but where have you gone internationally, Joe, recently?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've only been out of the U.S. once, and it was very recently. I went to Mexico, down to the bottom of Baja, and it's the first time I've ever been out of the country, and I was super scrappy, like didn't spend a lot of money on it, basically stayed with a friend who was down there. So I think I'm kind of in the same boat as Judy. It's like I've really wanted to travel internationally because I've been to nearly all the U.S., but I just don't make that kind of money with all the debt I have,
Yeah. Okay. Tiffany, have you traveled outside of the U.S.?
I have. I recently, 2 years ago, went to Grand Cayman, and then probably 7 years ago went to Mexico. But when I was in college, I studied abroad for a semester, and traveled for a month before that semester began. That was really the bulk of my travel.
Where did you study?
Sorry? Oh, in Florence, Italy.
Oh, so jealous. Okay. All right. Very cool. So Samantha does not live in the U.S., so she's obviously been outside of it. But this question was, have you traveled internationally, and where? And sort of how?
So I've frequently been to the U.S. I guess that's international for us Canadians. I grew up in a border city. So Detroit was 5 minutes away, so that was pretty typical of us to do that. I've been to parts of Central America, South America. I've done quite a bit of Europe, a lot of Asia. the only parts that I really haven't hit are Africa and Australia. So we'll see if that ever changes.
So how were these trips with your family, or these trips, because Jeremy told the story when you weren't on, I don't think you were on, about he did a service trip to South Africa and raised money and did HIV awareness work when he was there. So how were your trips set up since you traveled so much?
Well, the best thing about, being a first gen is that you have family all over the place. So it's like the excuse was if we went to the Azores, of course we're going to see other parts. If we're going to the Philippines, of course I'm going to see Japan. Like it made sense for us to travel and see other things. And also my family, when we became more affluent, also really loved traveling. So over Christmas break, it was my grandparents, my parents, my dad's brother, my sister's partner, me and my partner. We did a Caribbean cruise. So we've always incorporated.
Okay, so before the last trip, were all these other trips that you went on with your family and your family paid for them?
Yes. Yes, there's been a couple. Like I've done a lot more Canadian or North American travel that's been by myself. But international has been more with my parents.
Okay. Did I miss anybody? Kelly, have you been out of the U.S.?
Oh yeah, I've been to Japan. I did like a 3-week vacation in Japan in 2007. That was with, like, most of my big vacations have been with family. All of my own trips have been within the continental United States. And then I did England for 3 weeks with a day trip to France. So I know it was funny though when Jeremy was talking about making $8,000 last, and I was thinking, wow, that sounds like a lot of money to make last, because I think we did Japan on about $2,000 for 3 weeks, and did 3 weeks in England on about $3,000. Now, granted, this was a while ago; things are more expensive now, but
where'd you stay? Like, how did you make it last? Where did you stay? Where did you eat? That kind of stuff.
I think that was the thing, is that, like, I'm sitting there going, how do you even spend $8,000 on a trip like that? Oh, you do like a guided tour or something, because that's how much you'd have to spend. If you're just staying in a decent hotel, or if you find people to stay with, which is really, in England was the big thing, was that my mom had friends in England that we could stay with, and that's how I'm planning my trip around the U.S., is I'm connecting with all these people on Facebook and going, I can stay with this person in this state and this person in this state, and we can go to these things in this area. So it becomes this whole thing where, as long as you know people, that becomes probably the most expensive thing, is just staying places. And then obviously eating maybe $15 worth of food a day at worst. Japan, at least, was a brilliantly easy place to not spend a ton of money. I know that sounds weird. Like, people tend to think of Japan as really expensive, but if you don't mind eating ramen, that's actually really delicious ramen with pork and veggies and everything, then it's not that expensive. And England was the same way. As long as you're not, restricting yourself to 5-star restaurants, then you're not gonna spend any more money than you would here. But you also don't take yourself away from trying something new. I think in any situation, if you're willing to try street food, you can spend relatively little money and get huge cultural appreciation.
Yeah, and if you went to Canada now, you would be totally loaded, since the Canadian dollar is in the absolute tank. I know this because I get paid in Canadian dollars.
On the list of places we're going.
I'm telling you, that's
going
a cheap place
to Toronto, absolutely.
Okay, so I want to go back a little bit. Tiffany, tell me this. You said, I think I probably take more traditional vacations. What do you think? Why do you think that?
Just because when I'm planning a vacation, I am planning a hotel or a hotel at this point. When I traveled in Europe, I stayed in hostels, and I had a close friend that made the entire trip with me, and so that was a much easier decision. Plus, we were college students and broke, so we really didn't have a choice. You could go to one city, or you could go to 8 for the same amount of money for the stay. But now, because I have kind of a quote-unquote regular corporate job, I have X amount of days every year for vacation. I'm very, very limited in that. And when I take into account the domestic travel that I kind of have to make because of my family, my vacations are short. And so I spend more money on them just for the sake of ease. That's not a positive. I wish it could be cheaper, but when you have 5 days, you maximize those 5 days, and sometimes the easy options are just significantly more expensive.
So I wanted to talk about that because one of my questions was, does your employment affect your travel? For that very reason. You know, how many days a year do you get for vacation? 2 weeks?
I've been with my organization for a little while now, so I've built them up, but traditionally 2 weeks for all of the other jobs I've had. And half of my family is on one side of the country and the other half is on the other. So I either would choose a fun vacation away from my family, or the majority of that time be dedicated traveling to and from Nashville or Phoenix.
So when you decide to spend more money, is it air travel that you spend more on? I mean, obviously you want to stay in a hotel, but is that
it's air travel? The activities there are not necessary. I don't seek out guided tours and the most expensive restaurants and that kind of thing, but the air travel and the hotel.
Okay, so one of the questions I had was, is the air travel, or however you're going to get from A to B, is that just a necessary evil, or is any of that enjoyable? Like, okay, so Judy, you're going on a grown-up vacation, right? You obviously are flying there.
I'm going to a grown-up place, and I'm using a plane to get there, but the planning is that it's going to be on the super cheaps. And I'm meeting some people from Ireland there, so it could be a complete and utter mess, but yeah, we're not staying in 5-star hotels, and we're definitely not eating at fancy places or taking guided tours. That's not really what this is about.
Has anyone taken a guided tour, and would anyone? Okay, has anyone ever taken a guided tour? Samantha has. What, a guided tour of what?
So my parents have always made sure there's a historical or learning component of everything that we do, the joys of being homeschooled. And so that included on vacations, where it'd be like, we would get to choose one thing that would be fun for each of us, and then mom and dad would just fill up the rest with museums and historical stuff. So I have been on garden tours, which I have now chosen. I feel like now I have
guided. You mean guided?
No, like gardens, like cultivated gardens.
Garden.
Yeah, I've been on bird sanctuaries, aquariums, historical Havana. I've been to you name it. I've probably done it. I can probably give you a good rating on it, and I can probably tell you about my tour guide and what their name was.
Okay, so would you do that now, or was that sort of torture?
Yeah, we actually totally did that when we were cruising. We were like, yeah, tours, yeah. So now I've grown into being my parents, which is an interesting experience.
Okay, so Kelly, tell me about the guided tour you took. I can't wait to hear about this.
Well, I mean, it wasn't. It was sort of a guided tour. It was a walking tour of the town of Bath. And this is one of those things where, if you want to find a tour that's going to show you something, but you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, this is actually a completely free thing that they did, or it's maybe £5 per person or something, which, basically $7 tour. But they literally, it was a walking tour around Bath, and it was very funny. The guy was a stand-up comic in the area, and he was like, oh, I can make some money by giving these tours really cheap and are free, and people will enjoy it, they'll donate, and so that was fun. The other thing we did was we found a cheap bus tour of the English countryside, but once again, that was pretty cheap because it was, a bus tour. Got to go to Stonehenge and see a few of the more famous places in the area, but what was interesting and what we enjoyed about it was that it was mostly just countryside, so you got to see little towns and villages in the area that you don't normally, you'd never see these places unless you had family or friends that would live there. But, it's like if came to California, no one would really go visit San Carlos.
I I don't even know what.
No one's face is even lighting up. They're like, what the hell is San Carlos?
No idea what it is.
Exactly.
Judy, wait, I want to go back. So when you're booking your flight for this trip, what is the only priority cost?
I actually have to work it around things at the theater. So, I mean, I have a bunch of vacation days now because I have like a real job this year instead of just like running around being an unemployed actor. So the theater gets very busy for like subscription season, so I have to wait till that's over. And then we didn't want to travel in the summer because everything is extra expensive, so we're trying to cram it in when it's not snowing and it's not summer yet. And so we kind of picked a month. And we also said like by then maybe we could actually have enough money to eat on when we go on it. And from there it was just like figuring out what days had the best flight prices, like if I fly in on a Tuesday and we stay for 10 days or something like that.
So you don't. So what airline is it? Did you care, or was it all price based and schedule?
Oh, I don't care. I don't care about the airline. I'm going to be crammed in a little box for like 10 hours no matter what. So, I think it's Finnair is what I ended up with.
As in Finland?
Yes, as in Finland.
Okay. Well, have any of you had the luxury of choosing an airline when you're flying, or is it all okay, Samantha?
So it's actually okay. So like choosing an airline where you're going to do 24 hours to get from Chicago to like Manila is actually crucial. Like you memorize who gives what kind of food, you memorize what your leg space is. You're like, I've got 18 hours on one leg. Of course I'm going to care what airline I'm on. And so like my parents have like killed extra like dollars just so that, you know, we wouldn't be, you know, grumpy at hour 6 of 18, right? Like, but if it's less than, you know, like 10 hours, I'm like, whatever. Like, get me a seat on economy anywhere. I don't care, like, whatever.
So Jeremy, when you were doing your trip, so you're in college, did that matter to you since you had all this extra money?
Not so much because it was kind of like the first long haul trip we were taking, and I think going we didn't expect how long the plane ride was. It was almost 21 hours, you know, and you know there are parts of your body that are falling asleep that you didn't even know could fall asleep, and we just didn't we weren't ready for it, you know. But it's weird because the plane ride back was a lot quicker, so we just like popping these sleeping pills just to not feel the long plane ride back. But I think it's very important, like, you know, on the way back we were definitely choosing like, you know, plates of food that we wanted to come, you know, to us. We had like different, you know, special orders as far as like having you know, all these different ancillary services that come with, you know, getting a plane. So a plane seat. So maybe, you know, if you want a certain seat in a certain aisle, where you're not sitting crunched next to two people, because that happened to me going, and that wasn't going to happen to me coming back. You know, things like head pillows and blankets, you know, just getting different like special order things, or early booking, early getting on flights or early getting off flights, like that mattered. You know,
so if you're flying now, you would pay for that. You know how it's like on different airlines, you pay a certain amount to get on ahead. Would you pay for that?
Definitely. No, like if I'm going to take like a long haul flight, that's definitely something that you're going to want to do, because you want your bag to be like in the perfect spot on these long haul planes. Like, because as soon as, you know, at hour 10 and you need something in your bag, you don't want to have to walk all the way down to like, you know, get something from your bag. Like, you know, I think Samantha knows because she's taken those long haul flights before and they're ridiculously long. And so yeah, I mean, that's definitely something you look for. The ancillary services become important on those long haul flights.
What's your next trip, or have you taken any big trips like that far away since that trip and the trip to South Africa?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Europe. Well, I was born here in the United States, but you know, we were always flying from U.S. to Europe. So, but the flights are generally not as long. So you might have like a 9-hour flight from England to here. So I mean, it's not all that bad. And I don't think, like, I think, you know, Samantha said under 10 hours is like, it's doable. But when you jump on those long haul flights, it gets ridiculous. So Africa was far, and definitely you got to look out for the ancillary services.
So what's the next big trip you're taking?
I want to go to Thailand, actually. So if anybody's never been or has been, definitely shout out suggestions, because that is the next place I'm going to.
And so, okay, so your priority when you're going there, you're going to pay extra for the airplane ticket so that
Well,
you
yeah,
can
you know, it's funny because I was talking to some of my friends also that have done big trips, especially to like China and stuff. And the only thing they really worry about is the plane ticket. Once they land, like everything's just easy to just budget, you know. But the plane ticket and like what you spend on the plane is very, very important, and that's probably like the biggest chunk, you know. Other than that, it's just like staying in hostels, making sure you have Wi-Fi. And it's you don't really need a local guide. Just grab a book of Lonely Planet and you're off, you know. So I think.
books. You're actually going to use a book.
Well, I mean, some people use books. If you don't have Wi-Fi in some of these places, you're going to want a book. You know, it's not. I mean, I know we're all mobile and tech savvy, and that's cool and dandy. But you know, in some places they're not going to have Wi-Fi. Because I mean, when I was in South Africa, we had to buy like data, right? So they had this whole setup where it's just like, okay, you could give us like $15 and you'll have data for like the next half hour or hour. So you just have to kind of like play with your mobile. You have to Skype your friends back home, let them know you're alive and well, and figure out your trip from there. But it's not like we had data 24/7, you know. So having a book, sometimes it still works out.
Well, I remember the days when you took trips based on books, but I hadn't thought about the data problems. Because when I go to Canada, I have a plan. So because I go to Canada a lot, that I have that data. But I mean, do you guys think about? Are you planning for data and connectivity when you're like Judy? Did you think about that? Like,
yeah. Actually, the people I'm going with tend to travel internationally a lot more than I do, and so the first thing I was like, okay, well, how is my cell plan going to work? Do I have to get a local phone when I'm there? Because I've had friends come over here from the Czech Republic and they buy like a cheapo prepaid phone for a little while. So we kind of went down a list of different things like that because at the time also we're like, well, it's Rome and Venice. It's not, the middle of nowhere. It's not outside of Western civilization. It should be pretty relatable, but we don't know what the prices are. So I bought a book. I bought a hardcover book that has like some stuff is already in there about different places that I want to travel to. There's like mini translations in there for when I forget everything and insult people, emergency stuff like that. So it's like straight out of 1980s. I have a tiny little book that I'm going to be hauling around with me, and I already looked into getting myself like a cheapo disposable cell phone when I'm over there so that I can get a hold of anybody that I need to.
So, because who's your carrier now?
Right now, I actually have Virgin Mobile, which I will not do a phone contract. That seems ridiculous to me. So I have a prepaid for them, but they work over the Sprint lines. So that's where my like accessibility is.
So you could, because Joe put in the chat that T-Mobile makes international use and data easy. Right, Joe? So you check this out.
Actually, when I went to Mexico, it was super easy. Like one of the things, because I looked it up, and it was the quickest thing I've ever done. It was like if you go to Mexico or Canada, and they have Europe slightly different, but it was like what'll happen is we'll automatically convert you to the local service for text and like basic services. If you want like super fast data, you're gonna have to pay for it. And then when I landed, it just sent me a text with a message with like, here's all the details about how this will work. If you want to buy the extra data, here's how it is. And I was sort of like, that made no sense how easy that was. So I was pretty down for that.
Yeah, AT&T does that. As soon as you land, it says, okay, now you're an international. But I pay $30 a month, and I can call the UK, I can call anywhere in Europe, and be in Canada or Mexico, and it doesn't cost me anything. It just uses my regular plan. I hadn't actually thought about that for this discussion. All right, wait, I wanted to get back to something. Do any of you, okay, so we know what Samantha does, but do any of you take vacations that mimic things you did when you were a kid? Okay, did you guys go on family vacations a lot? I know Judy went on one.
I went on severally.
The big Disney World one that I participated in. But I mean, was it because it's one of the funny things is I've been talking a lot about travel and eating out, and when I was very young, a lot of people I know, their families just didn't go out to dinner and didn't go on vacations. And it wasn't a poverty thing. It was just not as typical as it may have been in your youth. So my question is, like, did you go on family vacations? We know Samantha did. I mean, Judy, you didn't go every year, did you?
Yeah, we went on a trip every single year. It wasn't always someplace fancy, but we at least would go to, like, before you lived in Boston, we would go and see my Uncle Bert in Boston, or we would go to North Carolina and see Lana Nab or my Aunt Sis, but my mom had a lot of siblings and they were spread out, so a lot of it was we would go to another state and see family, so it was a little cheaper. But you know, I was like 6. It didn't matter to me if we were in a hotel or if I was sleeping like in my cousin's room. It was just a vacation.
You had to get away. So Tiffany, what were your vacations like?
Well, I also kind of split my time between two households, but we would take a vacation every year, every other year. My parents had a timeshare in Orlando, so we would go down there every November and go to Disney or whatever that event was for that year. But we never took any international travel as a family. I have a pretty big family, and that just I don't know that my parents have traveled extensively out of the country, so they wouldn't have necessarily taken their children.
Would you ever go to Disney as an adult?
I actually want to. But the other thing is now as an adult and an adult who doesn't have a full family, I can afford to pay for the express pass and jump in front of all the kids and kind of feel like a jerk, but not mind so much once I get on.
So, okay, that's funny. So, Joe, wait, Disney vacay, top of my list. Samantha, that's the top of your list? But you're going to China in October, but Disney's the top of your list?
But it's like my wish list. Like, I'm so close to Disneyland that I can touch it here.
Where?
Well, in Alberta. It's like halfway there.
Where? Wait, Disneyland.
Disneyland, California.
Okay.
Like in Anaheim.
Okay, who would like to go to Disney? This is fascinating to me. Like, who would go there as an adult without children? So Samantha, Tiffany, Kelly, would you?
I went there as an adult. I was there like 6 months ago.
It's the best.
And why did you go? Wait, this is fascinating to me. Why did you go, Kelly?
Well, one, the girl I was dating really wanted to go. But it was a really interesting, like, mostly it was just the girl that I was dating wanted to go to Disney, like, badly. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go to Disney. That would be interesting. I haven't been since I was, like, 10, so, what I will say is it was definitely, like, the most magical place on Earth. Because there's no place in the world where you can wait in line at 102 degrees, with small children running around screaming, pay $20 for a set of fries, and still come out feeling somewhat happy.
Okay, so Judy, I have to tell you that when Judy left Disney, she cried and said to her mother, what were you, Jude, like 10? How could you take me to such wonderful, something like, how could you take me to paradise and then drag me back to reality? It was one of, like, the classic moments of her childhood, right? She was devastated, bawling, you know, and do you ever think of that trip, Judy, and want to go back? Like,
yeah, I got to go when I was 18, not with my family. I went with friends down to it. And my current roommate is actually somebody that was on that trip. We went to high school together. And he and I keep talking about how we want to go back to Disney and Universal because now there's Harry Potter World down there. And we are grown-ass people, and we need to go to the Three Broomsticks and get Wizarding Wands and all this other stuff. And yes, I would definitely go. And I've thought about it, like, I want to go to Disney before I have kids because they're just going to fuck it up for me. Excuse my language. They're just going to screw it up for me.
Okay, Joe, I am so fascinated by this. This is one of those turns that, like, this hangout's taking that I never thought. Joe, you want to go to Disney, and Jeremy wants to go with you?
I didn't know I was going with Joe, but okay. I'll go with you.
Okay, so here's exactly what it is, right? I'm not really super into, like, fancy things or, like, super, like, elaborate vacations in general. But I never got to go on a real vacation as a kid. You know, it was always, like, very bootstrapped. So I probably wouldn't go to Disneyland more than once, but one time, absolutely.
Wow, okay, and Jeremy, you want to go too, so you can go to, and I actually did go and drink beer at that around the world place.
No, you know, I live here in Miami, so, you know, we have the Disney World in Orlando. So, I mean, you know, once you turn 21, that's just initiation. You know, that's just the pregame to your 21. You got to go to Epcot. So, I mean, literally, whenever I go to Disney, like, that is the place. You know, drinks around the world. They have great restaurants there too. I'm not an alcoholic. I do like the food there. And yeah, I mean, I don't really think about going to the rides or anything. If I want to ride on roller coasters, I usually just head over to Universal, Islands of Adventure. But Disneyland is, I mean, Disney World is great for the drinks around the world.
I am
They have
fascinated.
3 Michelin star restaurants. 3 Michelin star restaurants.
It is amazing. I went with Hesse the summer before last to take my daughter, and I have to say, it is never 102 degrees in Florida, by the way. That's a myth. But they make it as painless as possible. They really do. We're there. It's summer. We have to go to Animal Kingdom because she's obsessed with animals. But and Hesse's husband is like the pro of Disney, so he knows how to get those little passes to jump ahead of everyone, like Tiffany was saying. So he would like run to get so we'd go catch him and not have to wait in line. But they do make it pretty painless. Like I kind of get why it's so successful because, and especially if you're an adult with kids, if you stay in one of those Disney resorts, because your mom and I did this, Jude, put the kids in the pool and just sit by the pool and drink, right? And there's lifeguards, so you don't have to worry. But anyway, wow, okay, that was a total turn because I was not thinking about that. Okay, let's talk about Airbnb and staying in private homes, because one of these things that's said about millennials, and I know, Joe, when we went to Chicago for work, you said afterwards, because we paid a lot of money for a hotel that was okay, but you said we should have gotten an Airbnb, and it hadn't crossed my mind, and I think it would have been smart. Like, is that part of how you would travel if you chose to, or is it all budget? So tell me about staying in Airbnb or in private accommodations like that, and what the pros are and why you do it.
I mean, for me, a lot of it comes from the fact that I've done plenty of couch surfing in both directions, hosting as well as staying in places. So, I mean, there's always a little bit of it. We've certainly talked about the safety aspect and the reliability and all that. But I kind of like being embedded from the perspective of someone who lives in a place. Like, that's just a thing I really like. And then, of course, the value part of it is really nice, too. Like, I don't necessarily value the consistency of, like, a hotel chain that's exactly the same every time. I value, like, a combination of price as well as, like, comfort and kind of, like, I like a place that's a little more unique. So, I mean, I feel the same way about vacations as I do about work trips in that respect.
Let me just throw this statistic at you that I read when we were doing some other hangout on this. 70% of the hotels in the U.S. are chains, owned by corporations. And when you get outside of the U.S. and Europe, it's totally the opposite. So there are many more bed and breakfasts and privately owned hotels or different types of accommodation. So Jeremy, so you stayed in hostels when you traveled before. If there was no budget, if you had, I'm not saying a millionaire's budget, but if you were, had a nice corporate job and you were comfortable, would you ever choose Airbnb or a hostel, or would you always choose a hotel and hotel?
Well, I think what's interesting is like the way I like to take vacations or trips, and I think this can be said for a lot of millennials too, is we don't usually go to these big metropolitan areas. We usually, we'll take a flight to like a continent and we'll travel like that whole place. Like we don't take a flight to China just to visit China. We'll take a flight to China to go to China, go to Thailand, and go to whatever surrounding countries there are. And a lot of times, like when you're in those back countries, like Airbnb is not everywhere. Neither of these big hotel chains. So I mean, having those hostels and those bed and breakfasts and those private accommodations is really, really great. So I think the way I like to take vacations, and I don't think I'll ever really go to a hotel. I mean, maybe in the future when I'm looking to make a holiday trip or something. But for the way I like to take trips now, definitely like the private accommodation with Airbnb or hostels is kind of going to be my go-to. Because I only really care about a bed and Wi-Fi. I don't care about all the accommodations that come with a hotel. Because I'm looking to trip, and I'm looking to experience like the local vibe, like what's going on. I'm looking to be in the city 24/7 and just come back at night just for a bed and Wi-Fi. That's it. And a hotel like tries to like take a little piece of home of where you're from and make you feel comfortable in that country. But I'm not trying to look for that. I'm trying to look to be uncomfortable. I'm trying to look to just be immersed in that culture. And the best way to do that is just to be in it. So I mean, a hotel just kind of like takes that away from you a little bit, and that's not what I'm looking for.
Okay. Tiffany, would you ever do that? Would you ever do a private accommodation, like home exchange or Airbnb?
I have. I think my preference is the privacy of a room. So I know that you have that option, but Like, I've traveled in hostels when I traveled with my best friend, but now if I'm traveling with my boyfriend or even by myself, I want a lock. And maybe that's just because I, like to be able to close the door. And so I love the ideas of bed and breakfast when you have your own room and it's not a major shared accommodation space. But as far as like renting a couch or renting a room, I'm less interested in that now.
Yeah. When I was in the UK, when friends came over, bed and breakfasts are totally typical. You don't usually have your own bathroom. And a lot of my American friends had issues with that, even if it was a really nice place. Have any of you traveled in the UK and stayed in places like that? Or Europe? Judy, you have.
Yeah. They had the crazy showers that I couldn't work.
That's right.
I mean, I did, and when I traveled with my friend, we made sure that one of us was showering and the other was with our stuff, or it was locked up. And maybe I just always worried about that kind of thing, but I don't mind sharing a bathroom, but I do want a door. I don't want to be 6 feet from someone else that I don't know sleeping without a wall in between us.
Yeah, I get that. All right, so how do you book your vacations? Let's talk about that. Like, okay, Jeremy, you're going on a trip. Where do you start, and how are you booking it?
I think a lot of it goes, it's just kind of like impulse in the beginning. I'm just worried about the flight. And then after that, everything else kind of comes with it, because I don't know what hostel I'm going to be staying in, every single day. I know where I'm going once I get there. That's kind of like home base for me. But, I think the way travel's done now and the way I'm thinking about traveling to Thailand is just kind of like, okay, flight, I know what hostel I'm going to. After that, I'm kind of like backpacking it, and I'm going to end up in whatever hostel, I end up, as I go through, Thailand or as I go through Asia,
So is there a website specifically that you're using, or are you scouting them out all individually? You know what I mean?
Well, there's websites for backpackers, and usually they have like these flight packages okay, we'll fly you to Thailand and we'll pick you up from on the other side of the continent, somewhere in maybe China or something. So I mean that's really what it is, just kind of like booking the flight is kind of the important thing. And they have a list of hostels, but at the same time, like, you're gonna meet people on the road, So I mean, that's just kind of like a backpacker thing.
You know what I wonder? So Tiffany is concerned about safety, and you are so fly by the seat of your pants. And I wonder how much of it is gender based, because the reality is, as a woman, I much more relate to wanting a lock and feeling safe, because that's a gender issue. I mean, this comes up again and again. For me, the idea, like, Jude, so you're going with friends, but if you weren't going with a group of friends, would you ever fly and not have your accommodation booked and just wing it?
I have no problem flying on my own. Just winging it, no. I'd probably, at least for like the first night or two, have something lined up that I knew what it was, and like I wasn't gonna just like get murdered in an alley someplace, even if it costs a little bit of money. But that's internationally. Like, if I was gonna go to like LA all of a sudden, I might just get in the car and go. But like we were talking in the chat over here about like Airbnb and things like that. I am more prone to like try to go camping on my way instead of doing some sort of share thing where there are a lot of strangers that I don't know, because with camping it's probably not as safe, but I feel like I have more space, more seclusion, and I don't have to worry about other people as much, and it feels safer to me. So I don't know if anybody else gets that sort of thing, but it just feels like I can deal with wolves, but I don't know about strange men.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to ask Kelly. I wanted to focus a lot on international travel, but Kelly, in the chat or before we started, you were talking about taking a road trip, right? So obviously it's in continental U.S. or at least North South America, and you were talking about planning it to stay with people you knew, right?
Yeah.
So are any of these people going to be people you don't know in real life? Like
Yes.
Social media connections?
A lot, actually. I'm using a lot of Facebook connections that people I've met through various groups. And part of it is, getting people, coming up with something that says, like, maybe I'll do a travel show about the U.S. and driving across the U.S. and do some crowdfunding for that, because people might be entertained by seeing something like that. You could take it in various directions, like the millennials version of Jack Kerouac. Because I think the thing is that we talk about, like, we're talking a lot about vacations from the standpoint of people who probably have jobs where you're allotted some kind of vacation. But for me, I'm a minimum wage slave, and so for me to come up with a vacation, it has to be really, really creative. You know, there's no guaranteed vacation. I don't even, I don't get paid vacation. I don't get any kind. So like for me to come up with a vacation has to be a really interesting and creative process, as opposed to just going, I have some money saved up. I'm gonna book a hotel. I'm gonna find an attraction that I'm interested in. Then I'm gonna go do that thing. For me, it's like I really got to make my own entertainment.
How much time do you get off? Because you obviously get no paid vacation. How much time do you get off to take vacation?
Nobody. I'm not obligated. There's nobody obligated to give me time off. So if my employers wanted to, they could literally work me 40 hours a week, every week of the year.
So okay, so Joe doesn't have a corporate job. Judy, do you get paid vacation?
I do for the first time in my life. I get 10 days of paid vacation, and I feel like a kid in a candy store. So I would not be taking this trip to Venice without it, because I'm now that I finally have like steady income. I have a background in theater and acting for anybody watching, so that means like I've been eating ramen for about 10 years. And so finally, steady paycheck, decent money, something I actually enjoy doing. And my first thought was, oh my God, I'm going to attack my student loan. And now I was actually sitting there going, I keep waiting to pay things off, and like I'm up with my loan, but it just feels so guilty to do something like this when I still have student loan debt. But at the same time, I was thinking about it, and I'm going to be like 45 before everything's paid off, and I have, well, maybe not 45, but it's going to be quite a while, and like maybe I'm not going to live that long. I should probably go to Italy and flirt with some Italian guys and eat some gelato, so I have something to think back of when I'm like kicking it at 43. But yeah.
Oh, okay. But I think the point, I mean, like the student loan debt holds you guys back, because that's what most people are carrying from taking these trips. And at what point do you go, screw it, I just want to live? Like, have you guys had those? I mean, Joe, have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty responsible, but I don't, I guess because of some life events, which made my, years in my 20s a little more serious than some folks. Like I lost my mom. Like I take my life pretty seriously, including taking it easy sometimes. And so, like, I don't really necessarily think I'll be around in 5 to 10 years either. I mean, I'm not saying I'm expecting that to, but that's given me a certain perspective, which is like, yeah, you got to take your time to really enjoy the world and people as soon as you can, because there's not going to be a guarantee that they'll be around.
So, Jeremy, do you still carry student loan debt?
Sorry, I was mic there. Yeah, no, I do. I think everyone does who graduates. I think it's really, really common. But at the same time, I don't think, like I said in the beginning, I don't think, I think, people are just traveling now because the future is no longer guaranteed, right? So why are you going to save for it? Just take what you have and just go, and then come back and figure it out. But I mean, people who travel, they're traveling, on extreme budget, and they're making it happen, So yeah. I don't, Kelly wants to travel at $800 for 6 months or whatever. But that, to my point. It's not that hard to take a grand or two and just have a great traveling experience and then come back. You don't need a massive amount of cash to go out and spend at a luxurious hotel for 3 weeks and eat your heart out over there. So you don't really need all of that. You can still have the same great experience just backpacking with significantly less amount of money. And I think millennials are doing it all the time now. Especially now that since we're making up most of the travel budget for the entire world. That's why we're always broke too. We got so much money to spend because we're always broke, which is go figure, So I thought that was pretty interesting.
So Tiffany, my responsible one, does your student loan debt bother? Do you think about that when you're thinking about vacations?
It does, but I guess the negative for me, I was doing the math and just realized that my big trip was almost 10 years ago, my senior year of college, or the start of my senior year. And so a lot of the student loan debt that I carry is actually debt from my study abroad and the traveling time around it. And then I also did an internship in New York. And so just housing for that was a little more expensive than Iowa. And so I carry some of that debt, and I kind of have to remember the experiences that I had when I'm starting to complain about what I'm paying for. So yeah, I definitely carry it around, and it's been a concern for me. But I have friends and family that kind of have to remind me that it'll get paid eventually. Not enjoying my time right now is not going to help the situation. So sometimes you just have to take a break and give yourself an excuse and get back to being responsible when you get back in town.
Okay, and have any of you ever taken a train or a bus for a vacation? All right, Samantha, of course. Go, Samantha.
So I went to an arts magnet school, and routinely we would compete in the U.S. because it's about a 14, 15-hour bus ride from where I went to high school to New York. And so a lot of international competitions are in New York. So I am used to bus rides. I'm used to charter bus rides. I'm also used to train rides because I've done train rides for many lobby meetings that I was a part of. So we would train up from Waterloo to Ottawa, that sort of thing. So I'm frequently okay with both of those methods of traveling.
There's a big difference between traveling on a bus and traveling on a train. Let's just point that one out. I did 22 hours on a bus from Pennsylvania to Florida for spring break my last year of college, and I wanted to die. And yet I did it willingly and knowing what it was going to be. And when you get on the train, you're like, oh my God, I can stand up. The people here, like, they have their teeth, and they're not going to mug me. I can stand up and go into the observation room. It doesn't all smell like a chemical toilet. The train is like luxury to me at this point.
Yeah, it's just that I don't live anywhere where you could take one, to get anywhere. That because when I lived in the UK, it was a common thing. So Joe, have you taken a bus trip? I know you have. You've gotten around by bus. I mean, far, right?
It's been a little while, but I've done like most of the country on a Greyhound, and I even wrote some rock and roll songs about it back in the day. And yeah, you get real realistic about your idea of what's fun and a vacation when you've done 38 to 45 hours on a Greyhound.
All right, wait, Kelly, tell me your story. You said you met a guy that was a traveling hobo?
Oh yeah, well yeah, Joe's completely right. Like you really, once you've taken the Greyhound vacation, there's that brings a whole new level to traveling. I think I actually had a really good experience though. Like I would totally do it again. Yes, I met Joe on the Greyhound. No, I got off at Colorado Springs and was waiting for my friend to pick me up, and this guy was there. He had like a big old backpack and like all this like a fishing pole and all this other stuff. And he was just, he was my age, and he was like, yeah, I meet people on Greyhound, make friends with them, and then if they're going home, I'll see if I can crash on their couch. I'll usually trade them some weed, or I'll cook for them. And I was like, interesting. And he was like, you see that mountain? I'm going to go live over there for like a month. And it was just this big mountain. I was like, what are you going to do? He's like, I got a bedroll in here, and I've got my fishing rod, and I got a bow and arrow. I got a bow. I can make some arrows. I'm going to go hunting. I was like, okay, so this person still exists in modern America. He literally just travels around the country on Greyhound because it's cheap, works odd jobs, finds people to stay with, and when all else fails, he hunts.
Okay, so wait, Judy just threw something in the chat that said hitchhiking. Has anyone ever gone hitchhiking? When I was very young, people still hitchhiked a lot, but then the 70s made it really scary. Joe, you did hitchhike traveling?
I tried it a couple years ago because I was sort of like, all right, I'm curious. And
have you guys ever watched the movie The Hitcher? Please go watch it. It's from the early '80s or late '70s. You will never hitchhike.
Is it scary?
Please.
Is it about dying?
It's called The Hitcher. I'm telling you, go find it, and you will never hitchhike again. But seriously, so you got scared, Joe?
Well, before I was like, it was totally an unknown experience, but I wasn't traveling like across the country. I was just doing like, I tried it on a couple like, once from here to Denver and once from here to like Taos.
So please tell me no one else hitchhikes here. I'm sorry. I'm stepping in as the mother here. Don't do it. Like, really don't hitchhike. We're taking that off your option. I know you're poor, but take the damn bus. It's safer, right? Jeremy, you are not going to hitchhike. Are you serious?
No, I'm just messing with you.
Another one of those loops where I'm like, good Lord, seriously, I'm telling you, go look up The Hitcher. It's an awesome movie, and you will never want to hitchhike again. Okay. So say you all were quite successful. Would you ever choose to fly first class? Never. Samantha's saying never. Jeremy, it's a 20-hour flight to I don't know wherever the heck you're going. Would you ever, if you could swing it?
I mean, yeah, man. Like, I wanna say that I could fly first class one time. I mean, who doesn't? I always see these people in the front seat. If I can do it.
Wait, to say it? I meant for the convenience of it. You would do it so you could say I flew first class?
Yeah, I would definitely do it so I can say I rode first. I mean, it's something I've always wanted to do. It's something on my bucket list. It's like, I want to know what's so special about riding first class. These people get to sit in the front and get a little extra legroom.
About it.
Okay, you can tell me about it. Go for it.
Yeah, I got so in order to get to England, we traveled by what are they called? They're the standby tickets.
Yeah.
So essentially, when people cancel their tickets, you can get their spot at a highly reduced rate. So we got round trip tickets to and from England for $75. Now, granted, this was in like 1997, but still, $75 round trip England. And on the way there, the people that canceled their ticket were business class. I mean, there's nothing quite so amazing as getting to ride business class, because you don't get a seat, you get a bed. You don't get a little dinky TV, you get like a nice little 15-inch screen that you pull out of your thing. You don't get, the microwave tray of food, you get some chef actually cooked you something, and it's got like herb roasted chicken and the actual veggie plate, as opposed to just something that Panda Express was like, well, this doesn't look good. Give it to the airlines. That's business class, first class for you.
So remember Kieran's little riff that I loved about Spirit Airlines and how ghetto it was, and how he loved the fact that he was only paying for. He used the word ghetto. That was not my word. He loved how you only got what you paid for, and like you had to pay for leg room and you had to pay for air. Do you remember that? But he liked it because then he only had to get what he paid for. Does that appeal to anyone else? Yes. Samantha's saying yes. Okay, but why? Give me the lowdown on why. Because
it's like how I do makeup. If I want cheap mascara, I should be able to buy cheap mascara. If I want to spend $50 on mascara, then I'm going to spend $50 on mascara. It's the same way I want to do with my flights.
And so, okay, so Judy, you were saying yes too? Is it for the same reason?
Yeah, kind of. Like, there's some stuff that's important to me and some stuff that's not. Like, I don't need like extra baggage space and things like that, so that's something that at this point mostly I get to choose. I just pack less shit and I'm using less stuff. I need to stop swearing today. And I'm happier because I have less stuff to wash when I get back. But at the same time, like I don't need headphones if I'm going to be on a 4-hour flight. I can read a book, or let's be honest, I'll just fall asleep. I don't, depending on what I'm doing, I might not have the same requirements as somebody else, and if that's going to take money off of it, yeah, I would totally be happy doing it piecemeal like that. It's the same reason I don't buy a vacation package where it's like, book your flight and hotel at the same time. Sometimes I don't even book both sides of my flight at the same time because you can get it cheaper sometimes if you fly one way and then book to come back the other way separately.
Yeah, why don't airlines reduce prices? Gas is like super cheap now. I know, Jeremy, but they've also been losing money forever. Okay, so this is interesting to me because I totally get what you're saying, but I fly discount airlines a lot, and I always hear people complaining because they feel ripped off. So maybe it's a generational thing because you guys grew up with it, but like when you get there and you're checking into Allegiant and they say, okay, it's $75 if you want to come on fully clothed, you know what I'm telling you? It's like you have to pay for every bag, you have to pay for anything. And that's one of the airlines I hear a lot of people complaining because they fly the Florida flight, you know, so it's a lot of tourists coming down and people, so do you think you just have an understanding that it's, that's the way it is? Because have any of you ever flown like, you know, a good airline like British Air where,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Yes.
so do you, I guess you can't miss what it used to be like because you don't remember.
Well, I flew when I was little, so sorry, Sam.
I mean, like, I've flown, like, Japanese Airlines still does it the old school way. Like, my grandparents have said Japanese Airlines has been the same since they started flying from the Philippines over. And, like, you can definitely tell. Like, you get on the plane and they give you, like, hand wipes. You're in economy and they give you hand wipes. And, like, everything is for free. And it's very interesting because I'm used to, like, Air Canada, which is, like, oh, you want to extend your feet, like, underneath someone's seat? That's another $25.
Yeah. So, and I know that there's another one like Korean Air that's like that. Okay, we're running over. We're gonna do more on. We have to do more segmented things. And Judy, the package thing was a great question that I missed. So we'll definitely do another vacation and traveling hangout. But we gotta go. So, thanks everybody who watched, and hang on, you guys, and we'll hang on a little bit after I stop the live broadcast.